Welcome to my YouTube channel, Pro Football General Manager RX. I am your host, Roy Pickett, and I will be providing my insights and opinions about the choices and decisions that GMs face and make throughout the year. In this episode, I will be explaining my thoughts about quarterback rankings and their salaries. I have come up with my own little formula where I look at what quarterbacks actually bring to the field in terms of their throwing talent and finding receivers. One of the things that I think is most important is being able to throw touchdown passes. In this formula that I've derived, last year Patrick Mahomes was the clear-cut MVP with his 50 touchdown passes. One of the biggest detractors from the quarterback is obviously throwing interceptions. 9 times out of 10, if you lose the turnover battle, you're going to lose the game. So I'm really going to hammer my quarterbacks who throw too many interceptions. As I go through the quarterback rankings that I've come up with, in the column over here that I have highlighted, these are the quarterbacks that went to the playoffs last year. Patrick Mahomes, Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, Phillip Rivers, Andrew Luck, Jared Goff, Deshaun Watson, Tom Brady, Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott, Mitchell Trubisky, and way down here at the bottom is Lamar Jackson. I had him ranked as my 31st best quarterback, or second from the bottom. If you were to take a look at my thought process, my ideal quarterback, 6.25% of his pass attempts are touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes blew that up at about 8.6%, and Drew Brees was at 6.5%. When you look at the interception percentage, I like it to be about 1.76%. I don't like interceptions. Patrick Mahomes threw a little bit over that, which was okay because, again, so many touchdown passes that were thrown. I take a look at the touchdown percentage minus the interception percentage to get this difference, or how much better he is at touchdowns than interceptions. My prototypical quarterback is about 4% more touchdowns than interceptions, so 6-2, somewhere in that vicinity. Another statistic that I think is very important is the number of yards that a quarterback gets passing versus the number of attempts that he throws. My thing that I'm looking for is somewhere north of 7.75 yards per attempt. Again, Patrick Mahomes tore it up, deserved the MVP at 8.8 yards per attempt. You can see the numbers here. 67%, or 2 out of 3 passes, I would like to see completed. There's a lot of people that will have high completion percentages, but then if you take a look at their yards per attempt and you see that they're throwing a lot of checkdowns, they're throwing a lot of wide receiver screens, and they're not really taking the ball down the field and really putting the pressure on the defense. In my estimation, I'd like to have about 32 passes per game. Maybe if you take that 16-game schedule, that's about 512 attempts. There are some that threw a whole lot more than that. Mahomes was over 580. Andrew Luck was 639. Ben Roethlisberger led the league with 675. In my own personal opinion, that is too many passes, putting your franchise quarterback in harm's way, taking maybe some unnecessary hits. And at the same time, if you're not throwing at least 512 passes, then you're not really carrying your weight and doing the things. You're relying really heavily on that running game. Some of the offenders in that category were Drew Brees. He was at 489, so he was close. Russell Wilson at 427. One of the great things about Schottenheimer up in Seattle is they really committed to running the football. And what that does is it shortens the game and allows Russell Wilson to not take too many unnecessary hits behind a offensive line that's not that great. If you look at my 67% completion percentage, if I'm throwing 512 passes, and we're looking somewhere in the neighborhood about 346 of those pass attempts being completions. I am setting my bar at 2 touchdowns a game for 32 in the season and about 9 interceptions. And that's in that 1.75% interception percentage that I was talking about. So we're looking somewhere like 3 touchdowns at every interception thrown, which is great. And all of these guys up here had a good touchdown interception ratio. Drew Brees was 32 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions. Matt Ryan 35 and 7, as was Russell Wilson. So they are getting a lot of positive plays without many negative plays. One of the things that I loved about Aaron Rodgers, this guy, he threw 25 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions, which is elite category. The problem is he was throwing the ball away a lot with his young rookie wide receivers. He was only in the 62% completion percentage, so he's probably throwing the ball away more often than he should have been. And he ate it up in his yards per attempt. Oh, it's only 7.4. But anyway, I really like the touchdown to interception ratio. Next thing I'm going to talk about is more touchdowns than interception. I just take the difference. I'm looking for at least 23 more touchdowns than interceptions. And all of these guys here in yellow were in the top 10. Some of them were above. Andrew Luck was 24. Aaron Rodgers was 23. And all of these guys up here were doing really well. One of the things that I find interesting was that Matt Ryan, who had a tremendous season, all of these yellows across the board, he met or exceeded my expectations, and yet his team didn't get into the playoffs. And that's really just a testimony about how horrible his defense was, in my estimation. Granted, there are some detractors. People are going to be saying that Matt Ryan is surrounded by good talent with Julio Jones, etc. I'm just saying, as far as he performed with the guys that were on the field with him. These rankings that I'm putting out here is my objective view of how well each individual quarterback did with their team. It's not saying that one quarterback is better than another. I really can't try to determine if Tom Brady would have done as well if he'd been in Arizona, or if Josh Rosen would have done it as horrible if he had been in New England. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the positive pass plays. That's all of the completions, all of the touchdowns minus the interceptions. And way up here, Pat Mahomes with his 421, Andrew Luck with 454, Ben Roethlisberger with 470. That's a lot of positive things that are happening by the quarterback. I'm really only looking for at least 369 as my bar that I'm looking to grade quarterbacks on. Then I look at all of the positive things that happen versus their attempts. If that's at a 72% clip, I'm very happy. Drew Brees tore it up at 79.9%. And then I come up with my little ranking system, which kind of gives you an efficiency of how these quarterbacks were compared to one another. Pat Mahomes up here again, 27. Drew Brees at 26. Matt Ryan was at 19. Russell Wilson was at 25. Again, he didn't have many passing attempts, but when he did throw the ball, he made it count. This last little thing here is kind of a weighted system. Like I said, Ben Roethlisberger, he threw the ball a lot. He led the league with 675 passing attempts, which I give him credit for carrying the mail. A lot of guys have good efficiency, but then they get injured, and then they don't play as many games, and then you got to bring in your backup quarterback. Not only was Ben Roethlisberger playing all the games, but when he was in there, he was making every moment count. One of the things that I'm concerned about with Carson Wentz and his new contract, last year, he was only about 59% of what Ben Roethlisberger was. So I take my efficiency rating and then the workload to give an overall rating. And so again, up at the top, here are my lead quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes and Drew Brees, for their respective teams, with their coaches, the surrounding cast. These guys were getting it done last year. Matt Ryan and Russell Wilson were in the 17 to 15 range, and the guy that I'm looking for, as long as he's in that 12.8 scenario, I'm going to be very happy. And the closest guy to that was Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers had a very good season last year. He made it to the playoffs, but for whatever reason, wheels fell off at the end. But this is the kind of guy that I can win with, same as Andrew Luck. Jared Goff, you can say what you will about him not being as talented as Patrick Mahomes, but in Sean McVay's system, he was very effective and was one of the top 7 quarterbacks for his team compared to against all others. Kirk Cousins signed his huge contract, getting $84 million, all of it guaranteed. The Minnesota Vikings have a great defense, and they thought they were just missing one piece. You get me a top 8 quarterback and a top 5 defense, we should be going to the playoffs. For whatever reason, Kirk Cousins, he just wasn't able to get as many yards per attempt as I would like, and his interceptions was a little bit on the good side, but his touchdown percentage was on the low side. So he's got to find Diggs and Thielen for more touchdowns. Maybe Kyle Rudolph and their new draft pick Irvin can help facilitate that to get Minnesota up into the playoffs this year. Anyway, that's kind of the gist of the situation. I'll go ahead and show you the bottom of the NFL last season. Josh Rosen and Josh Allen and Sam Darnold were my bottom 3, and mostly because of their interceptions. You talk about Bortles, he was 11 interceptions to only 13 touchdowns. Darnold 17 touchdowns to a whopping 15 interceptions. And Allen and Rosen both had more interceptions than touchdowns. Again, these guys may have been subject to poor play from their teammates, but whatever the case, when I grade them objectively and say how much did you help or hurt your team, they were at the bottom of the list. And that concludes this video. Thank you.